All right. Hi, everybody. You are watching Simply SCAdian, no title required. This is Zoph. Just a reminder, we're starting to run out of guests, so I'm just like hitting up my friends and acquaintances on Facebook. So if you are interested in being a guest, please let us know. We have a pinned form that you can fill out, and I will contact you. This is season 5, so we've managed to keep it going that long, but we have not attained our ultimate goal of having someone from Drachenwald or Lockhack on the show. So if you know somebody, please recommend them. We'd love to sync up schedules. Maybe we could pre-record it so that we could have a guest from overseas on the show. So tonight's guest, oh wait, so simply, oh man, I'm out of practice with winter break. Okay, so Simply SCAdian, no title required. We talk to regular folks in the SCA, regular people who do not have peerages or not landed baron and baronesses or court baron and baronesses, just regular people in the SCA who maybe are working towards attaining peerage, maybe don't care. But we believe firmly, Lucas and I, my co-hosts, that everybody has something to add to the conversation and we want to talk to them. So, speaking of Lucas, he's not here tonight. He had a thing at work that he could not miss. So he will be here, I hope, in 2 weeks. All right, so that out of the way, our guest tonight is Roisin de Burgh, who lives in the barony of Phoenix in the Midrealm. She is the chronicler and web minister. I'm sorry, is she, her, hers, your pronouns?
Yes.
Okay, she is the chronicler and web minister for the barony, the web minister for the Royal University of the Midrealm, and one of the staff for the Midrealm Wiki. Her craft of choice is embroidery, but she also loves writing and recording history. A few other things about her: she is a mom of 2 kids who are active in the SCA. She is physically disabled, which has affected how she can play in the SCA. And her husband Gabriel was on our show last year. I thought when you said his name, I was like, that name sounds familiar. And she joined the SCA in December 2018. Thank you so much, Roisin, for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So, the first question we always ask: how did you find the SCA?
Well, I guess I found it twice. The first time, so I've been a Rennie for 26 years this year. 2000 was my first year at a Ren Fair. And at some point in there, we had a bad experience with Scadians of telling us how inaccurate the Ren Fair was. Like, we know we're not accurate. We're not trying to be accurate. We're here to have fun. So it left a bad taste in my mouth for SCA. It was like, if that's what they're doing, I don't want a part of it.
Right.
And then I met my husband Gabriel at the Kentucky Renaissance Fair in 2016. And in 2018, we were married. And he said, I would like to rejoin the SCA because he was part of the SCA in Louisville, Kentucky, Barony of the Flame. I said, okay, sure, go do your thing. And a couple months later, he's like, I'd like you to come to an event with me. It's like, try it out. He said, try it out, see how it really is. Like, all right, I love you. So yes. Christmas tourney 2018 was my first event. Brought our youngest. She was only a year old. I had a lot of fun. I actually saw a couple friends I knew from Ren Fair there. And then after that, I was like, all right, I'll sign up. And now it's been uh 5 years.
Wow. So so Barony of Phoenix is the Louisville, Kentucky
No,
area. No.
no, Barony of Phoenix is Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay. No, that's Barony of the Flame. That's Louisville,
Yes,
Kentucky. Okay, so you live in the Cincinnati area.
yes,
What, so I know that you've traveled.
yes.
What are the regional differences that you've noticed between the different groups? I know you've gone, for example, to Harvest Day, which is a little bit up the road. What are,
And
have you
Har-
noticed any differences?
well, unfortunately, like Harvest Day is like maybe a half an hour to an hour up the
Wow.
road from me, so it's not that far. Um, I can't really say much as far as regional differences. Like we've been to North Oaken quite a bit because for us 2 hour drive isn't that bad. Um, I can't say like there's been too much regional difference between North Oakland and South Oakland. Um, I've been to events in Constellation a couple times with Simple Day. Um, yeah, unfortunately, I don't really can't really say I notice regional differences.
Yeah, it's more the people that are there, I think, than there are any
Yeah.
regional differences. I know that in the East Kingdom, for example, it's a little more obvious. The mentality in the
Hmm.
East of Southern region versus Northern region are bigger, but I've never noticed it. So I just was curious as a newer person to the
Yeah.
SCA if you had picked up on anything. So, how old are your kids and do they play?
I have my son is 13 and my daughter is 7, and they both do play. My son he is in Page School in the Mid-Realm, and he is a authorized youth fighter, um, which he authorized, I think, just this last year. So we're excited for that. My daughter, she does play, but she doesn't do youth fighting yet because we're waiting for her to actually listen to the word hold and not just fight to her heart's content. You give that child a sword and she will go. She has been fighting since she has been trying to pick up swords since she was 2 years old.
Wow. So,
Um,
what can you talk a little more about Page School for those who don't know about the Mid-Realm
mhm,
Page School?
yeah. So in Page School, it's for kids of all ages. There's no age limit on it. No minimum age limit, but it's the goal is to have the kids do so many hours of ANS, service, and martial. Like you don't have to fight martial, but you have to do something with martial. So like maybe help out at the martial, help out at the list or something, and do so many hours of that. And then once you reach those hours, you can advance to the next one. And it's a way to kind of help kids get involved in and learn more about the SCA.
How did you hear about the Page School?
I think I think I saw it on one of the mid-realm groups and I looked it up. Um, and I was like, yeah, this is something my son might like. And then Lynn Fairchild, who I know is a prior guest, her children are in it, and she was telling me about it at one of our practices. So I was like, yeah, I'll look into it and sign up. At least my older son.
So, what is your primary focus in the SCA?
So far, it's been between service and embroidery ANS. Um, yeah, I've hold several offices right now. So it's like I love doing the service because being disabled, the physical stuff is difficult. But the service stuff, like being the web minister and chronicler, I can do that sitting down. I can do that at home after my kids are in bed. I'm not, it doesn't limit, um, I'm not as limited doing with service. And then embroidery, I picked up embroidery right around the time I joined the SDA, and I've just fell in love with doing it. And it's nice to have little handcraft that travels well.
So, do you only do embroidery for the SCA or do you do modern stuff too?
Now I do modern stuff too. I'll find random modern patterns online and work on those. Most of what I do is SCA because I found I love doing like heraldic embroidery. Um,
What do you mean by heraldic embroidery?
actually, uh, so something like ah,
No,
if
hold it
it's
in
not
front
showing
of
my
your face. Oh,
yeah.
there we go. Okay, so embroidery that has heraldic coat of arms and stuff like
Yes.
that. So is that somebody's arms?
Yes, that's my husband's.
Nice. So I noticed that was that filled in or
Hmm.
was it just on the
No, it was filled in. Let's see.
okay.
Yeah.
Yay. Oh yay. Okay, we can see it. Nice. So I mean, I've never really had a chance to dive deep into embroidery with people. What do you do with stuff? Like you make things for people because I was looking at your blog. Let's just go there. I was looking at your blog where you talk about your ANS projects, and you have things like the sash you made, belt favors you've made, archery champion sash, another belt favor. So what can people do with embroidered pieces in the SCA besides frame them and hang them up?
Um, so I do, like you said, I do a lot of belt favors, where it's, my one of the belt favors I made my husband has my heraldry on it, and he wears it in tournaments as the I fight for her. Um, I have cup covers I do with a person's heraldry on it so they can put it on a cup and kind of show it, say, this is my cup. With the sashes, one of the recent ones I made is the Phoenix ANS champion sash. Same as Barony of Flames archery champion sash. And another thing you can do with embroidery is just decorate your clothing. Decorate the neckline, the hemline, cuffs, just to make it something more, make it stand out a little more.
Right, right. So you mentioned when we first started talking before we turned the
Mhm,
mics on, is that you started diving into sewing. Is
mhm.
that your ultimate goal is to embellish the stuff you sew with embroidery?
That's one thing I do hope to do at some point. Yeah, I've already got the embroidery part. Now I just got to work on the sewing part.
I hear you. I've been in the SCA for 31 years and I still hate sewing. So kudos to you for taking it on. I would much rather throw my money at somebody and let them make me stuff. Um, so tell me about your persona.
My persona kind of jumps around a little bit depending. I jump mostly right now between 14th century and Viking Age, depending on what I feel like wearing.
Do you have but you're Irish, correct? Or
Yes,
do you wear,
both of them I'm kind of centering with an Irish persona. It's just what era do I want to go? Um, I've kind of focused it on uh like 14th century was I chose 14th century because the the Ren Fair my husband and I met at is based in 14th century Scotland. So I was like, oh, that would be a fun one to go with. So that's where I've kind of done my main one as 14th century. And then the Viking Age persona was, as I've learned more about Viking Age, I've wanted to just learn even more. And I was like, let's explore it by dressing up that way too.
well, and the mid realm has a huge Norse
Yes.
contingent, so it makes it easier. Um, so do you research? So what do we know about um, embroidery in Ireland? Do you base your research on that, or you just do it for fun more than rather than dive into the deep research?
Right now it's more for the fun. I've been like starting to look into the research of it. I have some of the Opus Anglicanum medieval English embroidery books that were from exhibits at different museums. So I'm starting to collect the resources to dive in. I just haven't dived into the research part yet, but that is a goal of mine.
So I did needlepoint for a couple years, but
Mhm.
I just can't do it. But I've always really, really admired people who do embroidery. So I just want to dive in a little deeper.
Mhm.
Um, what is the difference? This is a really practical question, but what is the difference between all the embroidery flosses?
So there is so I guess I like, do you mean like floss types or just in general or
Just assume that I know nothing about embroidery at all. And if I wanted to start doing embroidery, how would I start? How would I pick a floss to use? How do you decide all those things?
most of what I do, I'm using the DMC cotton floss, mostly because it's cheap, it's readily available, and it's the dyes are color fast, so they're not going to bleed if they get wet. So that's a lot of what I do. I do have some silk floss, which I've been enjoying starting to try in my embroidery. It goes through fabric wonderfully. It's expensive and harder to find. But silk and wool thread are the two that would have been used in period. So I've been excited to start delving into those ones.
Yeah, okay, that was my question. So what's wool like to work with?
That one it's thicker. I haven't really done much in the way of embroidery with it yet. But it is on the plan to do. Um, but mostly what I've been using is silk because it's honestly it's a lot of fun to work with.
What makes it so fun?
Just how easily it can go through fabric. It you got to be careful with it because it can snag easily, but um when you have it waxed correctly and you have the right fabric with it, it's I don't know how to explain it, but it's just the feeling of it going through the fabric is just like giddy feeling to me.
So you have to wax it though? Is that like with beeswax?
Yes. Yes. I get a clump of beeswax, which you can get at any craft store as well. But it helps keep the fibers together and less likely to fray.
Okay.
You
So
especially want to wax the ends.
see, I am learning so much right now about embroidery. So, um, now I forgot, see, because I didn't write it down. So I forgot the
Oh,
question I was going to ask. Dang nabbit. Um, so, uh, yeah, nope, it's gone. All right. Oh, yeah, now I remember. I
oh,
knew I would if I stalled long enough. One of the things that I know I've seen videos of is people look at the front and the back of the
mhm.
embroidery, and the back of the embroidery, supposedly the masters, it was always clean, and it was almost like literally a reverse image. And I was like, who has that kind of time? Is that really how? Okay, so no. No, no.
No, any embroidery class you take from with Duke Kellick, like he talks about that too, is on the backs of embroideries. You'll see it where they'll do a little bit here, but then they need the color over here, so they'll just go straight to it. It's not always clean on the back. They didn't have time for it. I'm sure there were some, and I know nowadays that's something that they look at is what the back looks like. I don't care too much if I have a clean back if it's going to be covered, and most of mine get covered.
So when you were making, let's just say you were making the Barony and Phoenix Art and Sciences Champion Sash, which I need to go back on Facebook real quick and post a link to your blogs. Um, did you have the whole sash, or did you just have a piece of fabric and then that piece of fabric was mounted on the sash?
For the A&S Champion sash, I'm embroidering directly on the sash. I actually have another one I'm working on right now. I'm for that one I embroider directly on the sash just because of the nature of the embroidery and the design itself. When I did the Barony of Flame archery sash, that one I did on a separate piece and then attached it to the sash because it was with the way the design went, it was easier to do that way.
Okay. I'm putting links to your
Oh,
blogs,
mhm.
and there's words. Sorry, y'all. Look, I just finished having surgery a few weeks ago, so I'm still not braining 100%. So be patient with me. Um, so one of the other things you talk about is you love writing and recording history. Is that SCA history or world
Yes.
history?
It's been specifically SCA history. One project my husband and I started in the Barony of Phoenix was the archival project. As we didn't really have a digital record of a lot of our history. We noticed that too as as the SCA population ages and passes, the estates don't always know what to do with the scrolls and they return them to the barony and they just sit in boxes or sit it away. So one thing we wanted to do was take those scrolls, because they are gorgeous pieces of art, and make sure and try and scan them and save them and be able to display them later on. And in that, we've also received boxes of past history, officer notes, meeting reports, past newsletters, finding stuff that is from, around the time we started as a group in the 1970s has been really interesting. And I've been very slowly digitizing and scanning it all.
What have you learned as you've done that?
Well, one of the things that was interesting, and I love that I was a part of it, was recently the Barony of Flames place in the order of precedence changed. They moved up to, I believe it was second place. And some of that was from the information I found in our histories. Finding out, some of the stuff we thought, that's been oral history, going back into the paperwork, you're like, oh no, this actually started sooner. Being able to correct some of the thoughts of the history. That's been fun.
So just because of that research, not just, but because of that research, they realized that Phoenix was founded earlier than it was believed
No,
to have been founded, and because of that, Phoenix moved up in the OP.
no, not Phoenix, Flame, down in Louisville.
Flame. I'll
We
get it.
are very fire themed in South Oaken.
Yeah.
But
So,
no, it was Barony of Flame that they moved up in precedence.
okay.
And there were several people who were able to bring together the information, but some of it was from Phoenix's archives.
Wow. That's really neat
Hmm.
that you were able to dive that deep into the history of them to find out, or your own history, Phoenix's history to find out
Yeah.
Flame's history.
Yeah. So when some of the members of Flame came forward and they're like, hey, we're looking into this. I was like, hey, I have some stuff that might help. So,
That's so cool. All right, everybody, I dropped comments on the video. I tried to multitask and probably failed in both times. But I did drop links to see Roisin's blogs there and so okay. So y'all can see what amazing stuff Roisin's been working on. So I'm now looking at your middle wiki entry. Tell me more. I don't think I've covered really in depth in any of these shows about the Mid-Realm wiki page. I know we talked about the East Kingdom wiki page a couple weeks ago.
mhm.
But how did do you know how did the Mid-Realm wiki get started?
I'm not 100% sure of the details, because it's been around for a long while. But I know that Millicent has been one who's really been spearheading it. And originally, it was meant to be a history of the Midrealm, and it's kind of been turned into a mix of history of Midrealm and explanation of things with Midrealm and meet the people of the Midrealm. And I got into it over the pandemic, where I was started working on the Middle Wiki, and then about a year or so ago, I was asked to join the staff.
I didn't know that they had an official staff.
Hmm.
And you're also
It
on
is.
this, go ahead.
They do have, like, anyone can update pages if you have an account, but they do have official staff that you can go to if you have questions on certain subjects. And my I'm on staff of as like people's pages, so if people need help with their pages, they can come to me.
How many staff members are there?
I want to say about 10 to 12. I
Wow.
don't recall.
Wow, that's impressive. And
Yeah.
your page is really, wait, y'all, I gotta drop this in the
Mhm.
chat, then the video link too. I'm a hot mess tonight, y'all. I am so sorry. I am just, yeah, I'm having a day. Okay, so I've dropped your middle wiki, which is really impressive. Like I've seen a lot of wikis, but you even have the scrolls
Mhm.
for your Baronial Awards, your Kingdom Awards. Like you just scanned them in and you were able to put them up on your page?
Yes, I've scanned all of our awards that our families receive because I like having the digital copies of them all. And I was like, you know what? I want to share, like, these are gorgeous pieces of art. I want to be able that people that they can be shared and that the people who did the calligraphy and illumination, it's up there for them to be able to use if they want to share their work as well. And when I do upload it, I try to make sure to tag the calligraphers and illuminators if I know who they are.
Nice. So if I click on one of these images, it may
Hmm.
tell me who.
Yes.
So your Award of the Purple Fret. Wow, look at this. It was Ivan and Catalina, and the artist was Brienne of Greenlee. Wow. Oh, you just got that, September 7th.
Hmm.
Last year. This is really interesting. Like I have a wiki page, but like I said, I don't even update it. I have somebody else updates it for me. Which is lame as a web designer for a living. I should know how
Just
to
because you
mess
do it for
around.
a living,
What?
just because you do it for a living doesn't mean you always want to do it as your hobby too.
And I don't like, I have no interest in being a web minister for my barony, my march, none of that. Like
Right.
this is my 9 to 5 job, and that is that, and the
Hmm.
SCA is my theater, bardic arts, simply
Yeah.
skating in life.
That's why I don't do exchequer.
Oh, because you're an accountant by day.
Yep, exactly.
I hear you so hard on that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was Ren fairs.
Yes.
So one of the things you mentioned when you were first telling me how you found the SCA was that you had some Scadians who were not
Hmm.
very polite to you, um, in their snobbishness. I'm not
Hmm.
putting words in your mouth. I'm saying they were snobs and
Yeah.
they had no right being that way to you, and that's not cool. But it seems to me like there's a ton of Ren Fair people in the SCA, and they
Hmm.
seem to have like the secret to me. Like y'all just know how to have more fun with the SCA. Um, what is it about the SCA? No, what is it about Ren Fairs that's a great gateway drug to the SCA for some people?
Well, I think it's because with Ren fairs, they are short term. Most of them are anywhere between 6 to 9 weeks or 6 to 9 weekends a year. So depending on how close you are to a Ren fair, can depend on how many you'll go to in a year. I'm within an hour of one and an hour and a half of another. So if I went every weekend, that's between the two about 14 weekends. But I'm not going to go every weekend, and it's only a very short time frame. SCA, on the other hand, it's maybe you do one weekend a month, but it's all year long.
Right, right.
So, and I think another thing, at least for me, it was I worked at Ren Fair for a number of years. So I got to see the behind the scenes of Ren Fair and I loved it. But I also seeing all of the crafters there, I only got to watch. But then with the SCA, I got to learn how to do. And I think that's just what really pulled me in.
I never thought of that. I mean, for me, that's the coolest part about the SCA is that if I want to learn to do anything, I have the resources to learn to do everything. But it never occurred to me that most Ren Fair people just like to look and
Hmm.
not necessarily do.
Yeah. Or if they want to do, they don't know how or where to start with it. Whereas the Ren Fair or in the SCA, there's like, okay, yeah, you can go talk to this person. You'll need to get this stuff. There's people will help walk you through how to learn to do the thing.
Right. So my big goal is I want to learn how to blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
That's my big goal, but the only blacksmith I know close to me, he lives like 20 minutes away, is so busy with his blacksmith day job that he
Right.
doesn't really do teaching anymore. So I may have to just pay somebody to take a modern world course on blacksmithing. Zoph's goal for the future, learn how to blacksmith. Um, so do you still do Ren fairs?
I do. I don't do it as often. Mostly just there's personal reasons why I don't do it as often. But I still have a lot of friends within the Ren Fair community. I still try to make it out at least one weekend a season. So Ren Fair is still a part of my life.
All right, so Lucas dropped his jaw in shock when I mentioned this on another episode. I have never in my life been to a Ren fair. I have
Okay.
never been. So my question is, what do you do all day at those? Like in the SCA, I am known for
Mhm.
schmoozing. Like, I'll
Yeah.
watch the fighting, I'll go see Craftsperson's Green, A&S stuff, maybe take a class, but mostly I just wander around and schmooze with people. So what do you do at a rent fair? Because it's
Uh,
not the same.
but it's not much different either. So when I was going to the Ren Fair, like at my height, when I was going multiple weekends a year, if I wasn't working, I'd be wandering around, seeing my friends at different booths, watching some of the shows, doing some shopping, hanging out with my friends was the big thing. So in that way, it's not much different than the SCA.
Okay, but like for somebody like me, it would be awkward because
Mhm.
I don't have friends
Yeah.
in the Ren Fair circuit, so I just can't imagine. It's hard for me to imagine spending an entire day at a Ren Fair.
Hmm.
'Cause I think I would get bored after a couple hours. But if
Yeah.
you're in the circuit, then
Yeah.
it's easily 2 days, to Saturday and Sunday, you're gonna have a jam-packed day.
Yeah.
So how does someone get involved in Ren Fair stuff? I mean, you said you were on staff. How do you get involved and get to know people and make friends?
Well, it started with, I would only go maybe 1 or 2 weekends a year early on. And then as I went, I got to know people. Um, I'd see people routinely. They'd recognize me. We'd say hi. I'd stop, talk to them a little bit more often. And then Facebook got to be bigger, a little bit bigger. And then I've been going to Ren Fair longer than there's been Facebook. It kind of gives my age a bit. Um, and as Facebook got bigger and the groups started, I got to meet more people that way. I joined. So in the Ren Fair community, we have a bunch of guilds, and one of them is the International Wenches Guild. I joined that back in 2006, and that helped me meet some of the best people I've known. I'm still good friends with them to this day. In fact, one of them is why I have one of my cats. So, and finding just the little ways, you find a group and you join and you start making friends in the group, and then they introduce you to other people, and your group grows bigger.
All right. Lucas promises he's taking me next summer to some Ren Fair. So it might
Okay.
be the New Jersey Ren Fair. I might have to go out to New Jersey to go to a Ren Fair, but I will go and I will report back
Okay.
but if I go out east, because Lucas is newer to the SCA, he found Penzic 21 years ago, but he
Hmm.
was never a real SCAdian. He was just a Penzic goer who was a Rennie.
Yeah.
So now he's diving more into the SCA, but at his heart, he's a Ren
Hmm.
Fair guy, which is why I love having him as my co-host.
Yeah.
But if I go to a Ren Fair with him and his wife, Fiona, I'm sure that I will meet 50 million people and die trying to remember everybody's names. Okay, so you said we're diving back into something else. So you
Okay.
said that you are primarily an embroiderer, but
Yes.
you also do other arts and sciences. What else do you do?
I've done weaving on an ankle loom, which has been fun. I've made several belts and bag straps with that, bookmarks. I'm starting to get into sewing. As I've said, it's mostly been hand sewing as we get my sewing machine up and running. Um, but a lot of it's harder to do for me with um traditionally because one of my hands is partially paralyzed.
Mm.
So there's been a lot of adapting going on with that, but it hasn't stopped me yet. But so far, most of the other ANS I do is weaving and sewing. One day I hope to try out, sorry, uh, stained glass making. That's
I
one of
would
my big
love
goals.
to learn how to do that. That
Yeah,
would
that's
be
one thing I've
so cool.
always wanted to learn to do.
All right, we have goals. In the next
Yes.
2 years, I will learn to blacksmith and you will make something with stained glass. All right, Dap,
Oh,
we're gonna
yes.
do it. We're gonna do it. So tell me about your service because you're like web minister for a bajillion places. You've done all this service for your barony and for the kingdom.
Hmm.
What is it that drew you to doing that service?
A part of it is, being a mom. When I'm at events, it's harder to do stuff because I've got to be a mom to my kids. My husband is a rapier marshal, so he's usually on the list. He's usually helping out on the list one way or another. He's not there all day, so he's very much, also parenting the kids. But not being a fighter, it's easier for me to, be on kid duty. But about a little over 2 years ago, I became I became disabled with spinal stenosis, and it's walking is difficult. And as such, I started going more towards how I could do service that doesn't require physical activity. So, like, I can't really retain or do things like that. Doing troll, I've done a couple times, but it's hard to do when you got kids. Web chronicler, I'm good at that. I like writing. I can do it sitting at my computer. I can do it, meetings are once a month. Though that was easy for me to get into. Same with web minister is I've already had the two blogs. They needed someone to help with the website who knew WordPress. I said, "Hey, I do." And it just kept going, and I've really enjoyed it because I feel useful.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm really contributing. And that's one of the things that I always want to do is I feel like I can contribute and be a part of it.
How did you get on Royal University of the Mid-Realm staff?
Well, the new Rome Chancellor is also the Baroness of Phoenix.
Wow.
So when she had posted about needing a web minister, I went ahead and submitted my name,
And here you
and
are.
then they picked me. So,
Yay. All right, so we have just about 20 minutes left, less than that, 15.
mhm.
So I wanted to talk about disability in the SCA, if that's something you're comfortable with. If not,
I'm
I have
comfortable
other
talking about it.
questions I
Yeah.
can ask. So one thing that I have noticed is that on the whole, we don't tend to have events that are disability friendly.
Yeah.
What is one thing that if you could talk to every event steward in the world, what is
Hmm.
one thing you would tell them about that issue?
Um, that when if you have a site that isn't fully accessible, or you don't list on your website, potential issues with accessibility of the site, it really inhibits the type of people, really inhibits like the disabled community within the SCA. So as an example, we had one event where it's primarily outside, and the hills made it so that I had a lot of difficulty getting down to where the day camps were because of how the hill was. But there was no mention of it on the website at the time, or no mention of it in it was actually our own group event. There was no mention of it um in any of the stuff we got, but that's because at the time it wasn't something people were consciously thinking of. They were able to to go over it just fine. So it wasn't a conscious thought. It's trying to think of uh, sorry, I'm having issues with the wording I want to use.
That's okay.
Um, Trying to make sure that everyone is able to access a site and have fun at a site, because even the most accessible means the making it accessible for someone who is very disabled means it's also accessible for everyone. Having a ramp, it's not gonna stop an abled person from being able to go in to a site, but it will make it so that someone who uses a scooter or uses a wheelchair or a walker, it makes it so that they can go into the site, whereas they might look at it and go, nope, I'm going home, if they don't have a ramp.
I mean, it's something as simple as just stating if it's got one step going up into the
Yeah.
site. People just don't, so many event stewards don't think about that, and
Mhm.
it's negligent of what is a hidden population of the SCA, because when you are able-bodied, you don't think
Yeah.
walking down a hill might be difficult for somebody, or going down a hill, period, in a scooter might be more difficult if it's steep.
Oh yeah.
So what are things that we can do besides talking about it like on the show, but what can we do to help people? Um, like I'm just wondering, if we talk to all the different groups in the SCA, to talk to all the seneschals and ask them to add a disability checklist to their event planning resources.
Things like, when you're setting up court, will a person who cannot take stairs be able to get to where the court is? I've had two courts where I've been called up, but because it's on a stage, I could not go up there. They had to come down to me. That's not, I'd like to be able to go to
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you're supposed to. One thing I do love that Midrom has been doing is having the bench up there. When for court, I'm so glad for that because I've used it several times now.
Just to clarify, so they have a bench so that the person receiving the award can
Mhm.
sit down
Yes,
if they're not able to kneel.
yes.
Go ahead.
Um, Things like making sure that the bathrooms have um, accessibility stalls, because I've had some events where there hasn't been an accessible stall, so I've had to. While walking is difficult for me, it's not impossible, but I don't like that I would have to get up and walk into a stall, and leaving my scooter outside of the stall.
Right, right.
Um, Making sure that there are elevators that are working elevators to all areas of the event. Just things like that is keep in mind of, especially wheelchair accessibility is the most restrictive accessibility from what I have seen. I might be wrong. Um, but if you can get a scooter or wheelchair into the area, it'll be accessible for most people, if not everyone.
And as the SCAdian population is aging, it's even more
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, it is. Plus, you never know when you'll wake up one day and can't walk, like what happened with me.
Oh, that sucks.
It does. It's scary, but it just shows that it can happen at any time if you're not, you know, even if you are careful, it can happen at any time.
Right, right. Um, so, well, it's already quarter till, so I guess it's time for the last question. But first, did you have anything else that you wanted to add about disability in the SCA?
Um, not not necessarily. I can't
Okay,
think of anything.
okay. So, what, and even though we just covered this, but now you can give me a different answer if you want. What can the SCA do better?
The biggest thing is being really clear on event website. Well, I've being really clear with event websites on the level of accessibility at a site. Because if I know that I'm going to be struggling at the site, I need to know that ahead of time and not when I get there.
Right.
Um, that uh, it's something just that simple can have a lot of help. Be can be really helpful with it, I think. The other thing is more groups having websites for stuff and not being all on Facebook.
I absolutely agree, especially now with things going on, more and more people are leaving Facebook. So
Yes.
event websites are really the only place that
Hmm.
event information should be posted.
Yes, and keeping them updated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being my guest tonight.
Thank you for having me. I've had a lot of fun.
This has been wonderful. All right, I have been talking with Roisin de Burgh, and it has been wonderful to talk with you. And we will be back in 2 weeks with more Simply Scadian, no title required. Hold on, I gotta hit the button. There we go.